In the early days of Yu-Gi-Oh!, the game was experimenting with monsters having different subtypes called abilities. Starting off slow with the first ability being Flip, the concept quickly expanded to 5 abilities that we know today: Flip, Toon, Union, Spirit, and Gemini. Spirit monsters are the focus of our list. But what does this Spirit ability even do, you might ask? Well, it causes monsters to return to the hand during the end phase in the turn in which it's normal summoned, flip face up, or in some cases special summon. With an auto return feature built in, you'd imagine the cards would have really good effects or benefits for them returning to the hand. And for the good spirit monsters, you'd be right. This list, however, focuses on the monsters that don't do enough to make up for this huge drawback. And at number 10, we have Gundari. This level 4 fire pyro monster has 8 arms, yet only 1000 attack and 200 defense. Gundari was released in 2010's Absolute Power Force and thereafter was forgotten by time. Gundari is much like the spirit monsters released at the beginning of the game, being unable to be special summoned. When it's normal summon or flip face up, it returns to its owner hand during the end phase. If Gundari battles a synchro monster, both monsters are returned to their owner's hand at the start of the damage step. This means no battle damage occurs, and because one of the monsters is a synchro monster, returning to the hand instead returns them to the extra deck. On paper, this effect is just a niche anti-synchro card, the type that you would expect to see in side decks during a synchro-heavy format. However, Gundari really excels in mediocrity. Not being able to be special summoned means you can only really run this in a deck that doesn't need its normal summon. If you have a free normal summon, why not just run Alistair the Invoker for a boss monster or one of the barrier statues for a floodgate? Gundari's anti-synchro effect is a purely second turn effect and is outdone by better anti-synchro floodgates or destructions. Going first, why would you even need Gundari when you can simply play Soundproofed or a Dimensional Barrier to prevent your opponent from playing synchros in the first place? Going second, Gundari can be replaced by Ultimate Slayer, which can return any extra deck monster by sending the same category monster from your extra deck to the graveyard. And that's not even counting the benefits gained by sending a synchro monster whose effect can be activated from the graveyard. Even Ultimate Slayer has some built-in protection, preventing your opponent from activating monster effects in response to its activation. Gundari is on this list as it's been long replaced by better cards. However, its effect still has some use if you are adamant on including it as part of your deck. Being a Pyro-type monster, it actually benefited from new Pyro support. If you really wanted to, you could search for Gundari with Bonfire. At least it has that going for it. Whereas many of the other cards in this list have effects too annoying to use or too bad to even consider playing. And slicing into the number 9 spot is Tsumuha-Kutsunagi, the Lord of Swords, a level 11 Wind Warrior monster with 3000 attack and defense. Tsumuha-Kutsunagi was released in 2023 Cyberstorm Access and hasn't seen a re-release since. Kutsunagi can't be special summoned and instead can be tribute summoned with only 1 tribute of a normal summoned or set monster. When the Lord of Swords is normal summoned or flip face up, you can activate an effect that allows your opponent to send any number of cards from their field to the graveyard. Then each player draws the same number of cards from their deck. During the end phase, if this effect was activated, each player shuffles all cards from the field, graveyard, and banishment into the deck. Additionally, once per turn during the end phase, if Kutsunagi was normal summoned or flip face up, return it to the hand. First, to clarify some key points on how this effect works. The end phase effect of Kutsunagi, that is essentially a fiber jar for the game state, happens as a resolution of its first effect to draw. It resolves regardless of whether your opponent sends any cards to the graveyard or not. Negating the first part of Kutsunagi's effect stops the shuffling part of the effect from working. This means that outside of the usual suspects of Infinite Impermanence and Effect Valor negating Kutsunagi's effect, Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring also acts as a negate. The effect of shuffling cards into the deck is not an activated effect, meaning it works on monsters that have immunity from activated effects, but not on cards that are unaffected by other card effects. Now, with those clarifications out of the way, we can get into how bad Kutsunagi's effect is. Even if you do successfully activate it, your opponent is presented with a choice between sacrificing their field for both players to revitalize their hands, or leaving their cards in the field to survive the turn. The forced game reset by Kutsunagi further incentivizes your opponent to send their cards so they can draw enough to recover at the cost of risking an OTK. Kutsunagi is a bizarre board breaker that doesn't work well with other board breakers. Cards like Raigeki and Harpy's Feather Duster forcibly remove cards Kutsunagi hopes your opponent will choose to send. Using Dark Ruler No More on your opponent makes it easy for them to send their entire field since they can't lose life points that turn anyway. Also, the way hand size rules work in Yu-Gi-Oh! The rules only force you to discard down to 6 cards of your hand during your end phase, barring any other card effects affecting hand size. This means your opponent can start their turn with a massive hand if you use Kutsunagi's effect on your turn. This means it is probably better to tribute set Kutsunagi instead, as its effect will activate on flip even during the damage step. While Kutsunagi's effect isn't the best, it's actually easy to pull off. Using two better spirit monsters, Nikitama and Sakitama, you can gain an additional normal summon of a spirit monster. If you use either monster as a tribute for Kutsunagi, you can activate the Tama's mandatory effect in the graveyard, allowing you to chain block against Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring. If you want to try to activate Kutsunagi's effect on your opponent's turn, you can use cards such as Rival Rivals or Escalation of the Monarchs to tribute summon while the field is theirs. When utilized this way, Kutsunagi is a 3000 attack wall that forces your opponent to concede their turn or attempt to OTK through him. Additionally, if your opponent does send cards to draw, because it's their turn, you can keep 80 cards over 6 in your hand since it's not your end phase. Kutsunagi is still a bad card, of course, just a playable one. And at number 8, we have another big monster with Amaterasu. This lovely lady is a level 9 light fairy with 3000 attack and defense, and she has only been printed once in 2016's The Dark Illusion set. Amaterasu cannot be normal summoned or special summoned, and is actually the first monster with these restrictions, limiting itself to summon by tribute set. On either player's turn, if a face-down Amaterasu is targeted by an opponent's card effect or activation, you can flip it face up in defense position and draw one card. If Amaterasu is flipped face up, all of the cards on the field are banished. During the end phase, if it was flipped face up, you return it to your hand. With this card being a 2 tribute set, it's pretty hard to use it at all. Most decks enjoy dedicating their normal summon to their starter, and those decks that don't normal summon usually splash in another engine to help strengthen consistency. While Amaterasu's first effect of flip face up upon being targeted is very nice, it doesn't actually protect it from anything. This means if it's targeted for card removal, you can flip her face up to draw a card, but she'll still be removed before she can activate her banished effect at all. This leaves the best ways to activate Amaterasu's effect being to either use a card that forces her to flip, or to have her flip during the battle phase, as her effect can activate in the damage step. It seems as though Amaterasu was designed to trick your opponent into flipping her face up. This might be a reference to Japanese mythology, where the sun goddess Amaterasu had to be tricked into coming out of a Mono Iwado, returning light to the world. While it's awesome to see dedication to matching mythology to the game itself, for a lot less effort, you can just use Evenly Match, which can banish most of your opponent's cards in the field face down, making them even less accessible. On top of that, Evenly Match only came out 1 year later, leaving Amaterasu power crept rather quickly. But in Duel Links, Amaterasu had her time to shine. She was used in Thunder Dragon decks since the monsters in that archetype gain effects off of being banished. There is also far less non-targeting destruction effects in Duel Links, meaning Amaterasu was more likely to be activating its flip and draw effect. Additionally, with draw cards being sparse in Duel Links, any way to add cards to hand is pretty helpful. And coming in at number 7, we have Gishki Natalia, who is a level 4 water spellcaster with 1800 attack and 900 defense. She was first released in Duel Terminal 7 and later reprinted in Hidden Arsenal 7 and Knight of Stars. Gishki Natalia, like many spirit monsters, can't be special summoned and returns to the hand during the end phase. When it's normal summoned or flip face up, you can place one Gishki monster from your graveyard on top of your deck. Gishki is a ritual archetype that benefits from recycling the cards, most of which are not once per turn. Gishki Shadow can be discarded and add a ritual spell from deck to hand, while Gishki Vision does the same but for ritual monsters instead. Gishki Natalia's effect would be useful to set those cards back on top of the deck, but you know what's better than returning a card to the top of the deck? Returning it to your hand, of course. Salvage is a far older card that can return up to 2 water monsters with 1500 or less attack from hand to grave. Guess which water monsters have less than 1500 attack? Gishki Shadow, Gishki Vision, and a slew of other non-ritual Gishki monsters. How about the ritual monsters? Are they good targets for Gishki Natalia's effect? Well, no, not really, and it's due to the first Gishki ritual spell. While Gishki Aqua Mirror's first effect is to ritual summon any Gishki ritual monster, it also has a second effect to shuffle itself back from the graveyard to the deck by returning a ritual monster from grave to hand, which is way better than sending that monster to the top of the deck. If that wasn't enough, in 2023 a new ritual spell, Gishki Neko Mirror, was released, which directly replaces Gishki Natalia. Necro Mirror, while in the grave, could place one Gishki monster from your graveyard to the top of your deck while placing itself to the bottom of your deck. Gishki Natalia is a pretty bad normal summon for the Gishki deck. She's not helped by the fact that she doesn't have an effect that allows her to completely fulfill the requirements for the ritual summon of a water monster, unlike many of the other Gishki cards. If she did, Natalia might have seen some use during her time between its release and the latest wave of Gishki support, but she doesn't, and so she didn't. And at number 6, we have Susa Soldier. This is a level 4 Earth Thunder monster with 2000 attack and 1600 defense, and was first released in 2003's Legacy of Darkness set. Susa Soldier was reprinted 2 more times in 2005's Tournament Pack 6 and Dark Beginning 2. Like so many other spirit monsters, Susa Soldier can't be special summoned, and must return to the hand during the end phase of the turn it was normal summoned or flip face up. When Susa Soldier inflicts battle damage to your opponent's life points, that damage is halved. And that's it. So we can all agree this card isn't really playable in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! But in classic Yu-Gi-Oh!, 2000 attack on a normal summon was a lot. Any card over 1900 attack at the time was given a negative effect to balance the card out. Some notable examples of this are Dark Elf, which has 2000 attack, but you have to pay 1000 life points to attack. Goblin Attack Force with 2300 attack, but swaps to defense position after it battles with 0 defense. And Zombra the Dark with 2100 attack, balanced by the inability to attack directly, and losing 200 points after each attack. Susa Soldier's bouncing effect is actually better than Dark Elves or Goblin Attack Force's drawbacks, and it might have actually seen some play if not for the mandatory bounce effect that all spirit monsters have. At that point, the other monsters are better because if they survive another turn, they can be used to tribute summon a more powerful monster, such as Jinzo or Zaborg the Thunder Monarch. Susa Soldier was destined for failure from the start. Not only were Dark Elf, Goblin Attack Force, and Zombra the Dark printed before Susa Soldier, he was printed alongside a better spirit monster. A Sewer Priest only had 1700 attack, but could attack all monsters your opponent controlled once each. This gave it a utility, to clear fields flooded with tokens from Scapegoat. But while lacking in all utility, Susa Soldier doesn't require you to expend additional resources, unlike the next card in our list. And swooping into the number 5 spot on this list is Shinobird Crow, a level 4 Wind Winged Beast monster with 0 attack and defense. This ninja bird was released in Raging Tempest and was later reprinted that year in the 2017 Megatins. Shinobird Crow's effect is that once per turn, when it battles and enters a damage step, you can discard a spirit monster and Crow gains the attack and defense of that discarded spirit monster, and the rest of its effects is the Spirit Classic, where it can be special summoned and returns to the hand in the end phase. The Shinobird archetype is the only dedicated spirit archetype in the game. It utilizes ritual spirit monsters that can cheat out other spirit monsters, as well as gain advantage from their mandatory return effects. Shinobaron Peacock, one of the archetype's boss monsters, can special summon a level 4 spirit monster from hand, ignoring summon conditions, and Shinobaroness Peacock doing the same but from the deck instead. If a spirit monster that can't be special summoned is actually special summoned, it does not have to return to the hand during the end phase. This means Shinobird Crow can stay on the field, mitigating its negative effect. Both monsters that can summon it have impressive stats, Baron having 3000 and 2500 defense, and Baroness having the reverse, meaning Shinobird Crow will have a good discard for its effect. While this isn't bad, if Shinobird Crow had higher stats than a 0/0, it could be a huge wall or a powerful wall breaker. Shinobird Power Spot can help a little bit, giving all spirit monsters you control 500 attack and defense, but it's not really a replacement for having actual stats. Maybe Shinobird Crow would have seen play if the Mountain, the Myth, the Legend of Mono Iwato didn't release later that year. Why play a wall when you can play a card that says monsters cannot activate their effects except spirit monsters? Playing Shinobirds, you are unaffected by Mono Iwato, and it doesn't leave the field like it normally would. Shinobird Crow might have been replaced in its own deck, but at least it's usable. The last 4 cards in this list are so bad, none of them were ever truly playable, even when they first came out. With that being said, let's move on to the biggest spirit stinkers in the game. And smoldering into the number 4 spot is Fushi No Tori, a level 4 Fire Winged Beast with 1200 attack and 0 defense. First printed in Legacy of Darkness, it was reprinted only once more in 2005's Dark Beginning 2. Fushi No Tori has the effect of gaining life equal to the amount of battle damage it inflicts to your opponent. It has the usual spirit monster clause of returning after being normal summoned or flip face up, and being unable to be special summoned. Life gain in Yu-Gi-Oh! Is at best good for winning in time. Fushi No Tori simply can't do this in the modern era, as it's often a turn 1 play to gain life or burn your opponent before the clock runs down. On top of that, its stat line is terrible and doesn't inflict piercing damage. At most, you can gain 1200 life points outside of external stat boosts from other cards. You know what other card would gain you life points? Dian Keto, the Cure Master. It can gain you 1000 life points and you still have your normal summon. Fushi No Tori never stood a chance. How could it possibly get any worse than this? Fushi No Tori has a near 0 effect on the game state, even in the oldest formats of Yu-Gi-Oh! Yet, even with that being said, The next cards on our list are even worse. Gracefully flopping into the number 3 spot is Otohime. This is a level 3 light spellcaster with 0 attack and 100 defense. First printed in Legacy of Darkness, Otohime got a few reprints, with his most recent one being in Speed Duel Battle City Final Box. When Otohime is normal or flip summoned, you can target one face-up monster your opponent controls and change its battle position. Can you guess the next part of its effect? Well, it's that she can't be special summoned and returns to the hand during the end phase. Otohime has extremely limited use. Best case scenario, she can help another monster you control beat over a wall or defeat a monster with low defense. She can't do it herself since her attack is 0. If Otohime is set, her flip effect does trigger during the damage step, meaning she can switch a monster to defense position after absorbing an attack. However, if you're using her in that way, you'd be far better off using a flip monster that can destroy a monster like Man-Eater Bug, or return them to the hand like Penguin Soldier. Additionally, Otohime got power crept by a different spirit monster released later that year. Tsukiyomi was released in Dark Crisis, and had a similar effect but one with much more utility. Tsukiyomi changes one face-up monster on the field to face-down defense position, and yes, that includes your monsters too. With 1100 attack, Tsukiyomi can actually be used offensively to book a low defense monster and then run over it. Or you can combine Tsukiyomi with Nobleman of Crossout to remove a major threat from the game. Additionally, it could be used to reset your flip monsters face down again, allowing them to flip next turn. But that's why Tsukiyomi isn't part of this list, and Otohime is, but she at least got an anime appearance. In the episode Noah's Final Threat Part 1, Noah flips Otohime face up to force Yugi's Kuribo into attack position before attributing her to summon Yamada Dragon. This play would have won Noah the game if not for Yugi's set trap card, Nutriated Z, which allowed him to gain more life points than he lost. And at number 2 on our list we have Maharaghi, a level 4 Earth Rock monster with 1200 attack and 1700 defense. It was first printed in Legacy of Darkness and would later be reprinted in Dark Beginning 2 and the Invincible Fortress Structure deck. Maharagi's effect is that when normal summoner flip face up, at the start of your next draw phase, before you draw, you can look at the top card of your deck, and either put it back on top or on the bottom of your deck. While knowing your next card and being able to change your draw is nice, it's much better to just draw an additional card, or better yet, search for the card you need. This effect could work if it was part of a continuous spell or a field spells effect, but to use a normal summon on this effect is simply awful. Normal summons are so vital in Yu-Gi-Oh! Because you only get one of them a turn, and so they often start your combo. Even in classic Yu-Gi-Oh!, Maharaghi is not even a consideration, with many cards offering immediate advantage or a better delayed effect. Maybe if Maharaghi had a Susa Soldier stat line from earlier on this list, it might see some minuscule use. But while Maharaghi's effect is bad, it's not detrimental to the player. The effect may be slow and outdated, but it's technically always useful. That can't be said for the number 1 spot on our list, whose effect is almost always completely useless even in its own deck. And finally, on to the number 1 spot on our list, we have Shinobird Pigeon. This bizarre bird is a level 4 Wind-Winged Beast monster with 1000 attack and 1800 defense. Shinobird Pigeon was first printed in Raging Tempest and then later reprinted in 2017's Megatons alongside Shinobird Crow. Pigeon can't be special summoned and returns to the hand during the end phase, but more uniquely, it has the unbelievable effect to target one other spirit monster on the field and then return that card to the hand on a once per turn basis. Now, what's the use of this effect? That's what spirit monsters do naturally on their own anyway. In fact, there are other cards dedicated to working around the detrimental return effect, such as Izanagi or Spiritual Energy Settle Machine. The intended use of Shinobird Pigeon is to return a spirit monster that has been cheated onto the field by Shinobaron or Shinobaroness Peacock, thus making it impossible to return on its own. However, in most cases, that spirit monster is a Mono Iwado and you want to keep it on the field as long as possible. Another use for Pigeon is for a spirit deck mirror match, using its effect to return your opponent's spirit monsters to their hand instead. However, unless Konami makes a few new powerful spirit archetypes, the likelihood of a spirit deck mirror match is extremely low. Many of the Shinobird cards tried to make spirit monsters better by granting them a benefit from their mandatory return effect. Shinobird Power Spot lets you add a spirit monster or a ritual spell when a wind monster returns to hand, while Shinobird Salvation lets you destroy a card in the field when a spirit monster bounces. And it would have fit the theming of the archetype for Shinobird Pigeon to give an additional benefit for returning a spirit monster to the hand, yet it doesn't. But hey, that's what earned it the top spot on our worst spirit monster list. And with that done, the list is complete. If you think a different spirit monster should be on this list, or have a good idea for a different video, please let us know down in the comments below.